Darrin's just a fly. He's a problem. Actually, that's a line in a lot of episodes. It's interesting that what's his name is in the title because this is the first episode where Endora ever calls him what's his name. But behind the scenes, it was exactly the opposite. Because for all leading indicators, already, people aren't going to like when I say this, the set was a tense place. The end product will almost always be fine. You had music, you had nice lighting, you had wardrobe, you get actors who are really good, and everything comes out fine. That doesn't mean everything was fine behind the scenes, as we were talking about.
Bewitched, bewitched, you've got me in your spell. Bewitched.
Let's
bewitched.
chat about Bewitched. We're still rolling back time a little bit here and going back to season 1, where it all began, because I just find it fascinating to see the way they started finding themselves. Now, this is such an interesting episode open. It's kind of like episode 1 in that it's all voiceover, so there are no mics on the set for this part. It's extremely misogynistic, would offend any female today who thinks, well, not thinks anything, just pretty much offend any female who is offended by those kinds of things, because they're saying things like, any good wife stays home during the day and tends the house and all that stuff, and talking about has a green thumb. So it opens with Samantha planting flowers that end up being dead, and then, of course, she can't help herself, so she twitches and makes them real. If you're new here, this is Bewitched Chat, where we're just watching a Bewitched episode, talking some about what's going on behind the scenes and just enjoying the memories together. I want to talk about the writer of this episode very specifically today, as I did a few Bewitched Chats ago. Bewitched Chats ago, speaking of this very thing, it was, it's one that's it's a few chats ago, but it's an episode that hasn't happened yet, where they actually get a feminist writer in to talk about more of the female viewpoint. Notice Danny Arnold right there. Okay, so Danny Arnold wrote this episode, but he was also the producer of the first season. And there are several things to say about him, which I'm going to get into. But before we do, let me just give you a little bit of background on this episode. By the way, we're going to see Agnes Moorehead appear here. Again, I've said it a few times just because I find it fascinating. She's 63, Liz is 31 there. And this episode is called, this is the one where she appears, Darrin meets Mother, and it's called Mother Meets What's His Name. It's interesting that What's His Name is in the title because this is the first episode where Endora ever calls him What's His Name. And then, of course, that stuck. Now, we can see how they're still kind of trying to find their look and who they're going to be and what their characterization will be. Endora has big hair. Not that she didn't always have big hair, but this is big hair. And if you notice her makeup, it's different. It's not... Now, this is a colorized black and white episode. Of course, we know that she wore the blue forever, so they put blue on her, but I'll bet she didn't have it on when they were shooting it in black and white. But her eyes are just very different from what they'll be. They're actually like attractive. It's almost like Samantha's makeup on Endora, with the exception of in this colorized version, they made it blue. So, as time went on, she had on white under her eyes and then black under her eyes. And I know Judy Garland did that. A lot of people did that. And it's a trick, apparently, to make your eyes look bigger. But with Endora, I don't think it was to make her eyes look bigger. She just had very dramatic, what's it called? Histrionic, for those of you in the psychology field. Like if you see someone at the grocery store and they have on lipstick and it's big and big blush and like they look a mess in makeup, I guess that's called histrionics or something like that. Anyway, Endora had that way over the top people of Walmart makeup during the run of the series, if I dare say that. All right, so this is like, okay, so let me give it. So see, she's saying I have no cups, I have no silverware yet. This is episode 4 of season 1, aired on October 8th, 1964, so 60 years ago. And this, of course, is the big one where Darrin and Endora meet for the first time. Now, fascinatingly, you've heard me say before, and you've probably heard it elsewhere, that in real life, Even though Dick York had all of his problems on the set, apparently Dick York and Agnes Moorehead were close, and Agnes really liked Dick. I've learned from some of you, I can't confirm whether or not it's true, that she completely rejected Dick Sargent. You'll see a comment in one of the chats, and a few people have talked about it, that Dick Sargent, or that someone says he was told by Dick Sargent that Endora was so cruel to him, Agnes was so cruel to him that she made him cry on the set several times, that she just completely rejected him and didn't want him there. So, having set all that up, in real life, so behind the scenes, this relationship is about to establish the tension between the characters of Endora and Darrin. But behind the scenes, it was exactly the opposite. Because for all leading indicators, already, people aren't going to like when I say this, the set was a tense place. Let me tell you why. I'm going back to the writer and producer, Danny Arnold, who produced it only 1 year. They went through producers, and we know, I think it's season 4 producer, I have him on Bewitched Scandal, says, I can only handle it for a year, and I was out of there. So Danny Arnold, the producer this year, all right, now keep in mind, they're getting off their feet. They're establishing themselves. They're soaring in the ratings. They're fiercely popular. And they're about to establish what Bewitched will be for the seasons and years ahead. All right, so we're seeing magic stuff like Endora making a phone that's not working hook up. Oh, super cool. Samantha wants to make her coffee. She wants to make her own coffee, so she zaps up some Turkish coffee. And then the two worlds of mortal and witchdom will collide very specifically in this episode, not only with Darrin and Endora, but Samantha and the neighbor ladies, continuing in this very misogynistic vein, who come over with cake as the welcoming committee and are just holding their nose up in the air because she's not up to snuff of the people in their neighborhood. So again, this is an episode written by a guy, as opposed to the other episode that I already have talked about an episode coming up. I have to get it straight. Written by a female. Very, very different feels. Let me make one correction if I can. When I say correction, I really mean clarification, because I really knew what I was saying. But I mentioned that this woman who wrote the episode about the little boy who Samantha helps to play good baseball because he was lonely is the same woman who wrote Sisters at Heart. And you know, of course, a lot of you very correctly said, because it's so widely online and publicized, one of the biggest publicized thing about Bewitched, Sisters at Heart, the very famous Christmas episode about racism, wasn't written by a woman, it was written by school kids. Well, that is true, but I mean, think about it. Did school kids really write an episode? No. What happens is they got school kids together. If you know that, if you know the way kind of Hollywood works, sometimes you'll see in credits story by, meaning someone comes up with the idea, but then it takes someone to put words to it, to put it in format, to flush it out and make it work for episodic television. So yes, the kids came up with a story, probably said, oh, and they should do this and they should do this. Probably long and involved, but of course there was a Hollywood writer behind writing it, a female. All right. Really quickly, back to what we're watching here. Here come the neighbor ladies, and Gladys Kravitz really showing up for the first time in a big way to establish the snooping around. And the neighbor ladies have bratty kids. One boy is to one lady, one boy is to another lady, and then a third kid runs in and Samantha says, who's that? Whose is that? And they say, I don't know. He's just hanging out with them. And of course, Gladys has no kids. So what we're about to see here, I'm just going to tell you so that I could talk a little bit more about Danny Arnold, is Samantha's going to, enthusiastically invite the ladies committee, welcoming committee in, get the cake. The kids are all little brats, which will become part of the storyline. Gladys is already snooping around because she's seen strange things happen. Only this is the 4th episode, remember. And Samantha's going to bust them. You know how testing for dust, seeing if something was made in Japan. Just it's so misogynistic, it's crazy. But I love it, not because I love misogynisticness or misogynism. See, and she busts them. But because it's just so campy, and they're just trying to kind of frame here Samantha is, who has the power to turn them into frogs, dealing with it, and Gladys is snooping around. These ladies are a bunch of things. She's testing the dust and going, "Oh my goodness, this is so terrible." All right, so let me talk about why I say controversially that things were already not off to a good start. So Danny Arnold, the producer of the first season and writer of this episode, you can almost tell from this episode a little bit of a caustic person, a little bit of a more she's cups in the cupboard that she didn't have before, and silverware, all things that are really connected with the audience at this point. A very caustic episode, very kind of negative, and maybe looking at the glass half empty instead of half full. So this guy who has passed, actually, I think it was 95, did very well in Hollywood. This is an early start for him. Some say he was bipolar. Some people would describe him as a very friendly guy. No, I'm saying that wrong. Some people would say he had very friendly moments, and some people would say at the flick of a switch, he would have very explosive negative moments. All right. So this is the producer. And again, if you don't know what a producer is, the director just kind of says, do this, do this. I mean, they kind of create what's happening in that episode. The producer is, even though Bill and Liz were ultimately in charge and own 25% of the show, the producer really has to say, he's the umbrella, the boss umbrella. Everybody's supposed to be under him. Now, of course, Bill hired him. It's Bill's show and it's Bill's idea, but Bill can't be everywhere and can't micromanage the crew. And are we shooting on time? And what scripts are we decided we want to use this script, make it happen. I can't direct this episode, find a director, all that stuff. So that's the big boss, Danny Arnold, who also wrote this episode. He went on to do Barney Miller, and he was an actor and comedian himself. But he could be very, very difficult and create a very, very difficult work environment. So why do I say that again? Just because we heard as the episodes went on and the seasons went on, and they went through producers and went through actors, and it's just the set just wasn't, just had problems. Not just problems like, Dick York's substance abuse, or Alice Pierce not letting them know that she really had cancer, or Marion Lauren passing away. So there's all that normal stuff. And then let's just say difficult crew. And I can tell you, as someone who has worked in this business my entire adult life, man, everything depends on how much you like what you're doing by what the set attitude is. So the end product will almost always be fine. You had music, you had nice lighting, you had wardrobe, you get actors who are really good, and everything comes out fine. That doesn't mean everything was fine behind the scenes, as we were talking about. So I'll just throw that out there just so you, again, get a little tone for what it was like to make Bewitched. I think it was always a challenge. And I've talked in the past how Liz, and people have told me, cast and crew, that she was very arm's distant and very professional, but not very chummy. I don't think you can say, oh, she was just not a nice person, or, oh, look, she wasn't friendly. I think she had to deal with, as the star and actually part owner of the actual show, these constant challenges on the set from the very beginning. Season 1, episode 1, and the entire season produced by this bipolar guy. Allegedly, I'll say. All right. So here we are. I love this. So if you're too young to know, phones were used to be connected to the wall. And if you had, actually, it was a big deal if you had a phone with a long cord, because most didn't, but you could walk around the room. And just, again, brilliantly directed by Bill, and brilliantly acted by Alice, who just does such an amazing job talking on the phone, walking around and seeing how the phone's swinging. And now here's going to come the guy to hook up the phone that she just talked about. Notice the color of the guy. Remember, this is 1964. Remember, this was a pretty big issue with Liz. For the time, there were frequently African Americans in the cast for the time. Um, they clearly made that a priority, and really bravo to them for doing that. So Gladys is going to figure out, that she was talking on the phone, that the phone repairman is here to hook up, and it just creates that whole look to hook up your. She's great. Look at that, how she played that. She's very good. If you didn't see a previous episode, I'll tell you again because I doubt everyone's watching everything all the time. Alice Pierce has that very character look to her face, and the reason that is because when she was a child, she was in a very, very bad accident and broke. I don't think you can break all the bones in your face, but a lot of bone. She was very torn up. And she healed with her chin far back and kind of collapsed her lower face in. So that's all because of a very bad accident that happened to her that she ultimately survived, of course, and then just went on to become this amazing character actress. And of course, here she already knows she's diagnosed with cancer. It's 1964. It's a very different time. And she knew that the prognosis was likely very not good at all, and she didn't have a lot of time. But she hid it from the producers and creators, Bill, probably Danny, and all these people just didn't tell them, so they cast her anyway. And then sadly, by season two, she passes away. All right, so here comes the meat. Now let's stop all this nonsense talk about behind the scenes, which of course I love. But let's talk about this episode and get into it because it's such a good episode. So Endora's back with her big hair and her wines on the sides of her hair, and she's going to meet Darrin. Now, let me say a couple things about that. So up to this point, Darrin has not met any side of her world. He only knows about it, refers to it usually in derogatory terms of, woo-woo and hoo-hoo and all that stuff. All right, so watch this. This is cool. You can see the camera's locked down, but yet they didn't keep it locked down because someone screwed up and the camera had to go down. Remember I told you in the past, when they use that white flash, that means they screwed up the setup, meaning, to disappear or change clothes, you lock the camera down and shoot it and then stop the camera. They go, and when you start the camera again, you can do an edit there and it's really clean. That did not happen here, which I really can't tell you why, because Bill was so good about that stuff. But she was standing and then she's sitting as Whistler's mother and she's on a motorcycle, all different angles. So I don't know if when they started, they didn't take that into account. They're like, oh crap. All right, let's just do the white flash and the camera will move every time. So they did the white flash, and they even did it for her there, just I think for consistency, though they didn't need it. They had to use it for Marion a lot because it was probably hard for her to get their places, even though they put tape around. Sometimes they were literally outline your feet with tape so you know exactly where to stand. And did they have Polaroids in 1964? Because I can tell you that to this day, people use Polaroids because if you use your phone, what if you're not there? To take a picture of how the scene was left, where it's called a hot set. So nothing's moved on the set, they'll put up tape and it'll actually say hot set. In other words, don't move anything. We're picking up shooting tomorrow at the same place, or wardrobe or hair. So they use a lot of Polaroids for that stuff. I don't know what they did back then. But they could draw a picture, but someone was see, does your mother have a big long nose and a pointy hat? Again, he's very, hasn't met anybody yet, doesn't know what to expect, and Samantha finds it very offensive. Here's my question to you. Does she look beautiful there to you? There's this thing about guys, I don't know if this is true, I'm told. To me, women are always prettier with their hair down. Now, of course, this is 1960s. People don't wear their hair down up that way, but they all did back then. All my relatives, I don't know, but I think she just looks way better with her hair down. Is that weird to say? I'm sure it is, but I'll bet you agree. So, I'm not digging the look, but notice how low that dress is going, and notice the cleavage there for 1964, which I'll bet is shaded. I just looked at it out of the corner of my eye. I'll have to look at it again. I think there's a little shading going on there. What do you think? They do that stuff all the time. That's not I'm not trying to say anything by that. Okay, here she comes. The big reveal of Agnes. How well, look at that. Look at the makeup. That's not Endora's makeup that we're used to, is it? Good evening. It's very unflattering lighting, by the way. I've talked about that in Harsh Shadows in the past. But, oh, isn't that good? I mean, isn't that good? And look at the wardrobe. So where's the big hair is now one of her other 18 million wigs. But I don't know whether we've ever seen her hair look like that in the past. But very unflattering lighting. Did you ever see, is it another Cinderella story with that coach from Glee who's just awesome? What's her name? Oh, she's just awesome. And she says in there, I look terrible and I sued everybody. That's a joke with some truth to it. Anyway, actors get very angry when they watch the show or watch a playback and the lighting's bad or the shot's bad because, you know, you can look really good or you can look really bad. And it almost always has to do with lighting and sometimes with framing and stuff like that, but it's almost always lighting. All right, so anyway, another question that I have for some who may be older than me is I know in today's world, wearing black is a thing. Black is just the thing, the dressed up thing. Was it really common in 1964 for women to get dressed up in all black? Or is this a make her look like a witch thing, make her look mean thing? Which, by the way, there is development of the character as well in terms of mean, and then she eventually gets to the point where she just Darrin's just a fly. He's a problem. Actually, that's a line in a lot of episodes. You have a problem and I'll take care of it. He's a problem. In the beginning, she's see, what did you do that for? Young man. And again, it's not that she doesn't do that here, but it's different. I don't know if you agree. I'd be interested to know if you agree or not. Because again, they're still finding themselves and who they are. And Dick's trying to be real nice and wants to like Mother. But, and very nicely says, just like someone might say, well, we take our shoes off at the door. We don't really wear our shoes on the carpet. With that same kind of tone as, we're not going to really use witchcraft around the house. And then, of course, look how low that is. Holy crap. Does it keep sliding lower? Look at that, 1964. I can't imagine that they didn't get a memo on that. I don't know why I'm just noticing this now. Again, probably because I'm here noticing things. Wow, was that dress cut low? And now it's framed out. Okay, so here's she's still being mean, like scary mean. And now Dick is going to match that tone in his acting, which he's just so good at. And now here she goes, looking so fierce in all black with that thing around her head and the makeup that goes up, the kind of, as they do wicked makeup, cat eyes or whatever you want to call it. But brilliantly done. There he goes. She goes, young man, raises her hand to give him a zap and disintegrate him. Okay, she was going to turn him into an artichoke. That doesn't sound very scary, but here come the pyrotechnics, I think. Ready? Mother is watching. Do it! Oh, green! I never remember green smoke, but it's colorized, and they cheated. So usually what you do with pyrotechnics, you set them far enough away from the actors where they don't get hurt. Somehow Gladys can see in the window. So they don't get hurt, but there are things exploding, even if it's 10 feet away or 6 feet away. But you can see they cheated there because she dissolved out as the smoke dissolved in. But in later episodes, the pyrotechnics are going off, and there have been several things official that somebody got burned. I mean, a lot of people get burned in pyrotechnics on movies and scenes, but I think maybe was it Liz or Marion who, during one of these pyrotechnic explosions, again, they look innocent and fun, but they're not happening in real life. They're quite scary. Someone's hair singed, and I think they got their hands burned. So look, there we go. That's a pretty low dress, man. Just saying. So it's not all as safe as it sounds. And it could be that perhaps this early in the run, they didn't have it down yet, or they didn't have a regular pyrotechnic guy that people trusted. So they just kind of had Endora walk out of the frame, then did the pyrotechnics with no one there, and then dissolved them together to make them look like that, which totally worked for me. But usually it's the pyrotechnics. They die off. The person walks off. It's the pyrotechnics again, and then they'll dissolve that. So the smoke goes up, and when the smoke comes down, no one's there. So that's usually how they do it with the cut, because it's any way you can do it. And here's the very tender ending. As always, keep the magic alive. And most important to me, keep the magic in your life.
But now I'm gone and I'm kinda glad to be